Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on November 21st, 2022. First item of business is roll call.
Deb Hutton here. Martha Street here.
Sarah Bowerly-Dansman here.
Cindy Canarney here. Next item is reading of the minutes for November 7th, 2022. If commissioners have any questions or comments, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I move to accept the minutes of November 7th, 2022.
And Sarah Bowerly-Dansman, I second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item of business is examination of claims for October 28th, 2022 for $233,862.25. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Sarah Bowerly-Dansman, I motion to approve the claims for October 28th, 2022.
Deb Hutton, second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next item of business, examination of payroll registers for November 4th, 2022 for $35,670.86. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I make a motion to accept the payroll registers for November 4th, 2022.
And Sarah Bowerly-Dansman, I second.
All right, have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Next item of business is reports of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
Not tonight, Madam President. Lots of activity in hand. I'll probably have some more next week, but nothing. I have some business before you tonight, so I'll leave it there.
All right, thank you. Is there a legal report?
None, but I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
All right, thank you. Is there a treasurer's report?
Also none for this evening. Jeff Underwood was unable to make it tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any business development updates?
Mr. Crowley is not on. I don't see him on.
He is not on. He is unable to join as well.
Okay, well, moving right along. Next item is new business. We have resolution 22-88, approval of lease for 4th Street Garage commercial office space. Who would like to speak regarding this?
I can, Madam President, a little bit. So we had this on the agenda last time, and as you recall, we had to pull it from the agenda just in terms of there were some details. So one of those details, just to update you, so this is for the 4th Street Garage first floor space. There would be 2 bays that would be occupied by Hoosier Networks LLC, which is operating the fiber network that you all had approved as part of the Meridian TIF district, Spider TIF, as you recall. So they wanted to have an Indiana-based headquarters. It was just called Hoosier Networks LLC, or Hoosier Fiber Networks as their commercial name. They thought that this downtown location would be the perfect location for their business to be set up. So they would be renting 2 bays, which this is one of the changes from last time, just FYI, is from 2,400 square feet. It's actually 2,436 square feet for those 2 bays split up. There's a little bit more interior space than we thought. There would be, the initial term is for a 5-year lease. So some of the way this is set up is that there was a tenant allowance of $45 to allow them to build out that space, which is being approved by this resolution. The rent for the first 3 years kind of reflects a payback period for that tenant improvement so that the RDC could recoup those costs. So one of the things we did is rerun those numbers to make sure that the RDC could recoup those costs from that square footage based on this level of rent. So those rents are laid out for each of the first 5 years. Any renewal term in the lease is done at market rate past that. So whatever the market demand rate would be reevaluated at that time and approved by the RDC for renewal times. The tenant is responsible for performing the build out in the space. That was one of the things that's very important. So they would send us invoices for how much it's up to. They would be entitled to up to the tenant allowance, the tenant improvement allowance from the RDC. Everything else would be on their dime. And also in the meantime, they would have 9 months to perform their build out. But in the meantime, as they operate in Bloomington, they would also occupy some space in College Square, which is owned by you as on a temporary basis. So we had vacant office space in that space so that they would occupy, and that there's a rental rate for that. I'm happy to answer any other questions that the RDC has on.
We probably covered it before, but their 9 months to do the build-out begins with the signing of the contract.
That's correct. Yep.
Whenever that is.
Yep.
Any other questions on Resolution 22-88? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I motion to approve Resolution 22-88.
Deb Hutton, I second the motion.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Resolution passes. Next item is Resolution 22-92, amendment to purchase agreement with CFC for 320 West 8th. Who would like to speak regarding this?
I believe I'm also on the hook for this particular amendment as well. So as you all recall, we entered into a purchase agreement, a tentative purchase agreement for the CFC portion of the Showers building to look at turning that into space for our police headquarters and also fire administration as well. The original purchase price for that was $9.25 million for that space, and we entered into the due diligence period beginning basically late summer. We extended that due diligence period by agreement into November. We've received most of the reports, if not all of the reports at this point for the due diligence. It did come back that it would be fairly expensive to do some of the renovations, as you see in the memo attached to this resolution. So we went back to CFC and negotiated a reduction of price of $500,000 to reduce the purchase price to $8.75 million. In exchange for that, CFC requested to be able to remain in the building to have a holdover period, because it's currently the location of CFC's headquarters for their operations in the area, that they would be able to stay in the building until as late as June 30th, 2023, which we thought was a fairly fair exchange, as we would not be able to get in there and start performing renovations until that time. So what this does is this would approve an amendment to the purchase agreement to reflect those two additional terms. As we've discussed in the past, this still needs to be approved by City Council. So the next step is that we would take this to City Council along with financing of potential renovations, the purchase and the renovations of the area, to use it as a police headquarters to City Council for their review and potential approval. We have until January 31st under the purchase agreement to secure financing for this renovation. So if City Council for some reason were not to approve it, that would cancel the purchase agreement. We would have to cancel the sale, and we would kind of come back to you for further options. If they do approve it, they would be issuing those bonds directly, because those would be paid for out of revenue from the newly passed lit, and specifically that what is approved for both economic development and public safety. So that wouldn't be necessarily an RDC bond or a TIF bond. It comes out of a different revenue source, so that's why you all wouldn't be seeing that bond a second time, but you would see the finalization and the closing of the purchase agreement.
All right, any questions regarding Resolution 22-92? Not hearing any. Is there any public comment? Not hearing or seeing any. I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 22-92.
Deb Hutton, I make a motion to approve Resolution 2292.
And Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next item of business is Resolution 22-93, approval of revised hand program guidelines.
I'll speak to that one, Commission members. Starting on page 15 of your packet is Resolution 2293. It is followed by a summary document that gives you sort of direction on how we went about this. Just to recap, earlier this year we saw ourselves, quite honestly, late last year we started to see ourselves see rehab projects that were exceeding the traditional cap, which requires your approval when that happens. We actually have one tonight. but we thought it was time to look at the amounts that are allocated to those individual projects and what they are. So for, and to give you some further background, HUD, so the City of Bloomington is a participating jurisdiction for HUD, as you know, which allows us some flexibility to set our own program guidelines as long as they are in compliance with larger HUD guidelines. So we create our home rehabilitation programming specific. That is a large home rehabilitation programming under the HOME program. The Home Investment Partnerships program is the larger program, and then we create our programs individually. So we have some discretion over what we do with those. And so the department has had a number of those programs over the year. There are 5 that we traditionally would use. There are 3 that we use mostly. The last 2 we haven't used in quite a while that I know of. And so tonight we're recommending some changes to 3 of those programs. The first of which is the owner-occupied rehab program. We're recommending the cap be raised from $38,500 to $50,000 for individual projects. For the emergency home repair program, it's currently $7,500 for an owner-occupied structure. We recommend raising that to $10,000 for an owner-occupied structure. For manufactured mobile homes, it's $3,500. We recommend raising that to $5,000. And then a lifetime cap, we recommend raising recommend raising to $20,000 for an owner-occupied structure, sort of a site-built home, and then no change for the lifetime cap for a manufactured mobile home. And then for housing modifications for accessible living, which allows for adjustments to houses for those with accessibility needs, we have a $9,500 cap, which we recommend raising to $12,500. And then for nonprofits, this does allow for nonprofit facilities to apply for funds to make modifications to their facilities with a full match. We recommend raising that to $5,000 with a full match required there. So those are the dollar amount change recommendations that we have. We also have the last section of starting on page 4 of your supplemental sheet there, and we can handle this how you would like. I have laid out a number of subject items that I recommend we come up with language for the guidelines. Each program's set of guidelines is about 10 pages, so it's quite a bit to go through for an applicant, but there are some important sections we think that we need to put in there. So the first of which, and we talked about this at the beginning, is how often would we reevaluate these programs otherwise as needed. And we're recommending every 2 years that we would sort of reassess these and say what other changes do we need to make, barring any other program-specific changes we need to make based on HUD guidelines. We know that we just dealt with an issue of temporary relocation, so we think we need to sort of state in there how we tackle that. It's not something HAND is, quite frankly, built to do, to rehouse people ourselves. There are programs in the community that help people who are at risk of homelessness, but we need to be very mindful of our practices in doing that, and there are programs set up to do that here and there, so to speak, as can be done, but we are not built from a staff capacity and to rehouse people temporarily. This is a bit of an anomaly, so we think we need to put something in there. In addition, if it involves permanent rehousing, we have to follow the Uniform Relocation Act. We have pretty good comfort about where our bid language is through city procurement processes and our programs, but we want to make sure that's clarified. We want to put something in about, when possible, using higher efficiency systems such as HVAC and things like that. As industry terms evolve, we want to make sure that we are moving with the modular versus manufacturer versus mobile, which we talked about at the last meeting, and so we want to be sensitive to that and making sure that the correct terminology is adapted, as well as, quite frankly, how we discuss disability versus accessibility. I think that language is evolving, and I want to be making sure we're doing that as well. So I think that's important. The one point I'll make, and this is one, again, we came up with a situation recently where we had an appliance that needed purchasing, and it was $350, and how do we tackle that? Can the HAND director, if something's under a certain amount, like $1,000, it wasn't part of a change order or something approved by the RDC, can the HAND director have discretion to do that? And that is a request, I guess. We don't have to address it tonight, but I do think it's important from a practical sense when a project's moving forward. Is there a certain threshold where the hand director could, as long as it complies with HUD guidelines, could the hand director authorize something like that? So these, our recommendation is come up with language. We can revisit it, or you approve the outline and we can move forward that way. So we can also bring it back to a future meeting. So that summarizes the recommendations.
So just a clarification, John. In this resolution, there are specific recommendations from the staff to change the monetary values in the different sections.
That's right.
Specifically from 10,000 to 20,000 or whatever. But in this section, the other recommended program changes, it's more, here are the categories that we think need changes, but we're not doing them right now. We're not being specific yet.
Where
Very
are we
much for
in
the
the-
stick-built and stuff, but
The other
but
recommended
the others are
program
sort of, we'll look forward to, like, this, the 1, 2, 3rd bullet point is, make sure bid language is clarified,
Right.
but we're not doing it in this resolution.
That's
right?
correct.
So part of the resolution is specific, and part of the resolution is, do we approve looking forward into these categories without them being changed yet? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just asking if you prefer to see updated language, we can bring those back, or if you're okay approving an outline, because the guidelines are so extensive.
Oh,
I don't
you're
know
saying,
if
we trust you, so yeah, those are good categories to make changes in, go make them.
Yeah, or would you like to see the specific language that
I
we
see,
come up
okay.
with? So these are, as we sort of move along, and especially this latest one that you approved a couple of weeks ago, we just realized there are some things that we need to tweak, I think, with the programs that are important. So they don't run in conflict with HUD guidelines as long as they're in, so it's sort of a local discretion, I guess, and I don't know how much you wanted to take on tonight, so.
Thank you.
So I have a question, I have a couple of questions. So the first is, the last bullet point recommendation for other recommended program changes is about changing, like basically, one of the recommendations is to move, basically, put stick built and manufactured homes into the same category and put mobile on its own. But also above, in terms of the actual caps, there's caps there's specific caps for manufacturer/mobile homes. So I'm confused as to how these relate. Like, so would this mean actually that everything that says manufacturer versus like /mobile home is actually going forward only going to be mobile home, and a manufactured home is going to actually be elevated into the owner occupied structure kind of category?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We would not recommend any language changes on the caps right now. They would still be in the same category. The issue is the language, the industry language is changing on how someone considers manufactured housing, and then there's HUD's definition of it. So what we need to do is make sure that it all aligns together. We wouldn't recommend changing the categories, because the idea is that for a site-built home, it's one category. For a manufactured or mobile home, it's another. So we don't want to confuse you that way, but we need to make sure that we're sort of keeping up with the language, if you will. And because these were done, the last update to these was in 2018 and then 2013 before that, I think. So we want to make sure that as we move, that language is moving with us. So that's the idea there, to not, I don't want to confuse you there.
The next question I have has to do with the housing modifications for accessible living. So here there's an increase, a proposed increase in the cap for owner occupied structure and for the nonprofit facility modification, but not for the rental units or manufactured mobile homes.
That's
and
right.
Could you explain why you chose that? Because from my vantage point, the people that would most need help with this issue are people that are probably renting. So why is it the case that if someone's in their, like, owns their home, that they need more money for these modifications, but at the same time, we don't need to increase the cap for people who are renting?
Sure. The sort of rationale there is that for $3,000 per rental unit, if it's a registered rental in town, there are other things that the landlord would be responsible for, or if it's a per unit, if it's a single family unit, if that makes sense. So it could be a per unit, depending on what the unit is. So I wasn't comfortable sort of raising that writ large because it could be in a building with a number of units or not. So I think you're
Okay.
sort of trying to, I don't want to broaden it too much, because when you're looking at per $3,000 per rental unit, is it a door widening with newer housing? Some of that's already in place. Just didn't feel that we had a good reference point for what type of rental unit is. So my thought was we would just come back if there was a rental.
Okay.
We would come back to you if there was an increase, but we're just kind of, it's not as precise because you have housing that's been built for those with accessibility needs. There might be a ramp in a more commercialized rental unit versus a single family home. It's kind of, it's a harder.
Yeah, no,
target.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that I've seen a resolution about a housing modification accessible living project going above the cap since I've been here. So is this something that does this happen frequently? Are there problems with this?
Really, Barry Collins is here in the room and John Hewitt's on the line. We've done one HMAL, I think, since HMAL is the acronym, sorry, for Housing Modification for Accessible Living. What we did do, the basis for raising this cap is one of our program managers ran sort of what would an all-in take if someone needs a ramp, if they need a door widening, if they need doors, if they need a floor surface change. And we got to about $12,000 versus $9,000. So happy to have John or Barry comment further on that.
Yeah, when it comes to that, when you're talking about building just a simple ramp, okay, you have to go by the ADA guidelines and what the state outlines, which is you can only go 1 inch for every 12 inches it's a 1 in 12 rule. So if you had a 40-inch drop from the door to the grade, that means you have to have 40 feet of ramp to meet that. And to do that, it's virtually impossible to do for less than $10,000. So that's why we're saying that, in those cases, and then if we have to get into door widening or we have to get into putting grab bars and showers and things like that, I mean, the price just goes up very quickly.
And these are hard to
And that's
sort
why
of,
we're
I'm sorry,
looking
Barry.
at that. And that's why we're looking at raising those amounts.
And every case is different, so it's sort of, we kind of doing our best to estimate and may come back to you with one that exceeds. So trying to just move with it the best we can.
Yeah, no, that was all very helpful to understand some of your decision-making processes. Thank you.
So I just had a question on the discretionary spend that you talked about. What would be an example of something that wouldn't have already been part of a project scope that would come up? You mentioned you had to buy a stove or whatnot, but wouldn't that have already been included in the scope of a specific project?
Hopefully, but things get missed or things, which isn't a great rationale that we miss stuff, but we do. And things come up and, we got this far and turns out the dishwasher doesn't work anymore or whatever. I just sort of authorized the dishwasher was already in the scope of work, but there was confusion about who could replace a dishwasher, and so we went through. I found some HUD regulations that authorized was a dishwasher a luxury item or not, and so I found out HUD regulation that said no, in fact, it's not a luxury item. It's fixed. It's not going to go anywhere because it's going to be built into the cabinet. It will help sustain the marketability of the home, which is a HUD regulation. So I sort of went through all this rationale for a $350 dishwasher and thought, okay, are we going to need? Is there going to be something? If something pops up, do we need to take it back to the RDC? How do we handle that to keep a project moving? Because I also thought if we're in a position of a project needing to get done in weather situations or where the resident has to leave, they're not going to be in or out of their house based on a dishwasher, but it's an example of something that could stall a project. And how do we keep a project moving to get the rehab to resolution as soon as possible? So that was the idea that I offer.
Is there any contingency built in those kind of budgets or project scopes that would cover something like that?
Usually 10% contingency.
Yeah, we usually do about 10%.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it's, so just an idea, again, not.
So the example of the dishwasher would be within 10% of
Could be. Correct.
of some. So you're needing actually, say, $500 to $1,000 contingency or director's permission beyond that contingency.
If we need
So
it.
in addition.
Yeah. But not critical. I think that the contingency point is a good one that I didn't factor in, so.
So it may not be necessary to go above and beyond that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other
But if
question.
it does, you can bring
Go-
it back and we can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
address
let's
it
pull
again.
that one. Let's do that. That's a good point about the contingencies. So,
So the other point that I would make is, you know, I feel like this is a every 2-year process, which is appropriate, but it seems appropriate to recommend specific changes to the language and have that reviewed as opposed to just broad categories that aren't necessarily reviewed, and we may not know what that language is, you know, going forward. I would prefer something more specific.
okay. Why don't I write up each of those, and then maybe if you would you rather see them inserted in the guidelines, or would you rather just see a summary sheet of the language that we would then put in?
It would be great to see like a red line version
Okay.
of what's changed. And, you know, you did some of that in the document that we saw versus the original document, just to kind of understand the scope of the changes. Because it seems like, you know, we're starting to see a few more of these things, and I think it would be helpful to know specifically what needs to be changed and what's requested.
Sure, sounds great.
Part of that, for me, being newish to the, 2-year new to the RDC, is teaching me all these categories and what they mean for RDC, for homes and things. So it teaches me, and I appreciate that, so
Yeah.
backing that up.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
So,
then does that mean that we are, like, yeah, tell us what this means.
well, my question to Larry, it kind of seems like maybe we need to go back and refine and then bring it forward to a future meeting?
I would say.
Or we could approve part of the requested changes, because I think the dollar amounts are really straightforward. You know, from my perspective, a $7,500 project 5 years ago is a $10,000 project today, so inflationary concerns makes those numbers, you know, need to be adjusted. So I feel comfortable adjusting those, but want more specifics on the other changes requested.
We could certainly do that. I would just say whoever makes the motion to approve this resolution, just make a motion to approve as amended, Exhibit A as amended per the discussion, to take out other recommended program changes. So those are not explicitly approved, that those should come back to the RDC. But everything else in Exhibit A would be approved since those are the specific numbers, and then we would bring back the program guidelines with the red line changes for those specific changes. Otherwise, you could also, if you wanted to do it the other way, the way to do that would be to make a motion to postpone consideration of this resolution until the next meeting.
I mean, I'm fine to approve the monetary changes, and then we look at the other stuff at a future meeting. Because I think that that's gonna give you a lot of flexibility that you probably need now and be able to move it forward.
Okay, all right, well then, Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I motion to approve Resolution 22-93 as amended per our discussions today, such that Exhibit A is approved, accepting everything underneath other recommended program changes, and instead those changes will be discussed at a later date.
Deb Hutton, second the approval, second the motion.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
All right, resolution as amended passes. Next item of business is Resolution 22-94 to increase funding for an emergency home repair project at 4214 West Lilac. Who'd like to speak to us regarding?
I'll speak to this, and then I'll ask for Mr. Collins to chime in as well. So ironically, this one goes above the cap that you just approved to be higher. But we did talk about this. This is a mobile home rehab. The resident needs breathing assistance, and so replacing the floor is what's causing the higher increase here, moving to a solid surface floor instead of carpet. Which will help the resident with mobility and things like that. And I defer to Mr. Collins to say anything else about this one.
This is a project that is coming to you in like 3 parts. There's 3 separate areas. There's an HVAC component to this. there's a ceiling of window component to this, and now there's the carpeting. The carpeting that's in the home today is just, it's worn out, and it's a trip hazard everywhere you go. And this woman is in a walker getting ready to go into a wheelchair. And as you know, carpeted floors are not advantageous to someone getting around easily on a wheelchair or something like that. So we figured, plus, you know, she has a breathing issue, she has breathing machines, she has on oxygen all the time. So it'd be far better to put a hard surface floor in there, like a vinyl floor, that is easily clean and readily you can see the dirt and clean it up quickly rather than her having to breathe all this in. Included in this total amount is another amount to clean all the air ducts in the house. We fixed her furnace already, so that's working just fine. But it's been 12 years since her ducts have been cleaned. So you're recirculating all that dirt and dust, and so we're going to clean her air ducts as well. So, and that's the reason for the increase. So you're looking at, you know, $7,900 just for the flooring. And then with the other items added, it comes out to the 94.
Okay, so, just as a point of clarification, there's, the exhibits included are just for the flooring and not for the other,
No, it's that
spend?
94, that 9,475 includes all those other items as well, including the flooring.
Right, I understand that, but
quote
the,
exhibits.
in the exhibits, there's just the flooring information. Is that, something that needs to, I don't know if it's that
Yeah,
It's just,
that's just
the cleaning of the ducts is within the cap, and so since this is what takes us over the cap, that is the only thing that's needed in the exhibits, or
It
should
looks like there's a handwritten option that's added to the invoice on the exhibit. That looks like it takes it up to the 94. So what I see there is that it says options B to add vinyl plank received, and then it's just handwritten. So it goes
Yeah, but it
from-
says with HVAC and caulking, so.
yeah. So I don't understand that notation, but that's where the 9,400 looks like is noted on that.
all that added together comes out to 9,400. There's $300 in there for the caulking and sealing of the windows. There's another $780 in there for the cleaning of the HVAC system. There's another $180 in there for repairing the furnace that we've already done. So taking all those numbers and adding them together, you come up with the 94.
Right.
Was there a separate quote or invoice that you all had received that besides the
Yes.
handwritten notation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, which is in the file.
Okay.
And just to understand, oh, go ahead.
Oh, just I suspect a typo, that we were talking about Lilac Lane, but on the first page of the resolution, right above Bloomington Redevelopment Commission, it says the funding amount for EHR project at 1017 West House Street with the same amount. So my suspicion this is
Yeah, that's fine.
just
Just
a
wanted to-
typo from
I
a
was
past document transferred into this document, but it would seem to be the incorrect address.
That seems to be the incorrect address.
So I would follow up on the question that was posed earlier regarding, it sounds like some things have already been done and paid for
Yes.
under the cap.
Correct.
So really all we're looking to approve is the amount that takes us over the cap.
Correct. The 5,000, whatever it was.
Right. So the reason then why just the Exhibit A is in here for the flooring then is because this is what takes us over the cap, whereas the other things you didn't need to get approval because, yeah. I'm just trying to understand if we have everything that we need in the exhibits in order to approve the resolution. Yes, thank you.
All right, any other questions on resolution 22-94? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
And just as
Yes.
Commissioner Hutton pointed out, because the operative phrase in the resolution lists 1017 West House Street as the address, this will also need to be amended to be 4214 West Lilac Lane. So whatever you approve will have to be amended.
So Deb Hutton, I make a motion to accept or approve Resolution 2294 with the change of address in the appropriate line.
And Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, resolution passes.
Cool.
Thank you.
Next resolution is Resolution 22-95, and agreement for lighting installation for Hopewell Phase 1 East. And I'm guessing since you're up here, you're going to speak to us about that.
Yes, Matt Smithers with Engineering Department. This evening seeking approval for an agreement with Cassidy Electrical Contractors for services on Hopewell Phase 1 East project. These services include providing power to 6 existing outdoor lights that light the Sandstone parking area. These lights were previously powered from IU Health buildings that were on the site, but with those buildings now being demolished, the lights need a new source of power. And these lights are temporary until the new parking areas for Centerstone are constructed next year. Services also include installation of a new concrete pad, conduit, and wiring for the new Centerstone transformer that will be installed by Duke Energy. Contractor will coordinate with Duke Energy on the transfer of power to the new transformer. The relocation of the transformer is necessary for the infrastructure project. The agreement is for a not to exceed amount of $73,550. The contractor has expressed that they submitted this quote per the specifications we provided, but they have an idea on how they could do the work for a lesser amount. So we'll discuss that if the contract is approved. Work would take place as soon as possible. The city solicited 3 contractors for quotes for this work. The 2 other contractors responded they were too busy at this time to supply a quote. So we have the one quote from Cassidy. You can take any questions you may have.
Any questions from commissioners regarding Resolution 22-95?
Is it done in the past that the contracts, when you know it may come in for less, you still do the amount such as $73,550?
This is the first time I've actually done one in this fashion, but I believe so, that this would be a not to exceed amount. So if they can do it for less, then.
Okay.
We do by the quoted price, and so if there's a value engineer or a change order that reduces the price later, then we reflect that in the project review form. But we try to just set the not to exceed price of what we're actually quoted and what we receive.
And just, again, for the record, to be clear, especially for the details of this particular resolution, can you tell us a little bit more about the process through which you tried to solicit other bids? And how much work was done to try to get some other bidders on the project?
So we had put a quote packet together. We emailed that packet to 3 contractors. During the process, 2 of the contractors emailed back stating that they were not going to provide a quote, but they did not do that until the end of last week. So it was a little late at that point to try to find more quoters. We had it out there for about 2 weeks.
And what was the process through which you chose the 3 to solicit?
2 of them were recommended by one of the engineers, and then I selected the other one just randomly off of available contractors.
Is that normal to, again, I thought that normally we had open solicitation, so is there like a reason why, is this done for speed or something like that, that it wasn't kind of sent out more broadly?
Mr. Allen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe because of the amount of the anticipated amount of the bids, we were able to directly ask for quotes. If the amount was higher, then we would put it on our website where anyone could provide a quote.
That's correct. Yeah, there's a threshold amount for the types of bidding. So whether you're able to solicit quotes directly via email versus put out a formal request for proposals, this falls below that amount, so it's subject to the quoting. It's not limited to 3. You could, of course, contact as many as you want, but it's a minimum of 3. Non-responses like this are still counted for that requirement. So if somebody does respond and say, I don't want to quote, we count that as just a negative response, but it still qualifies under the statute for satisfying that requirement.
And is there some sort of, what's the harm in putting a quote like this up for for open bidding?
Yeah, it's not a harm. I mean, you can speak to this better, but in terms of just what we see practically is, so there's a lot more requirements, a lot more expensive to put it out if you follow all the statutory requirements for open bidding. So you have to notice it for a certain amount of time. It stays open longer. Then there's formal requirements in terms of the way you're going to contract that out. So typically, what you'll try to use the quotes for is if you do kind of what you alluded to before, Commissioner, which is if you want it to be a little bit faster, a little bit more streamlined, and you feel very confident that the responses you're going to get are pretty much in line with what you would get via an open quote anyhow. So.
And we viewed this as being time sensitive, because Duke Energy has relocation work to do on the Hopewell project and also on the First Street project that they say they cannot complete until the transformer for Centerstone is relocated.
Yeah.
And then also with the lighting not working this time, Centerstone has security, safety issues for their employees that they would like to see addressed as soon as possible. So we were trying to get this done as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's very helpful context because I think that makes a lot of sense, but also I think that someone that just saw this information without context might have some questions, so.
All right, any other questions on resolution 22-95? Any public comment? All right, not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 22-95.
Deb Hutton, I propose to approve resolution 2295.
And Sarah Bowerly Dansman, I second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. All right. Is there any general business discussion tonight that we need to have?
Maybe just note a word of concern for our fellow Commissioner Randy Cassidy from the passing of his mother. I know that we all knew that and just send our deep condolences from city staff and I'm sure the Redevelopment Commission to him and his family.
Thank you. Anything else falling under general or business discussion? All right, not hearing any, I'll seek a motion to adjourn.
Deb Hutton, I make a motion to adjourn.
And Sarah Bowerly Dansman, second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.